The headlines broke like a thunderclap across both sides of the Atlantic. Harry and Meghan, the couple who fled the UK in 2020, have mysteriously returned to British soil. But this isn't a simple visit. This is an escape, a full-scale flight from the California dream they once painted as their salvation. What triggered this dramatic turn? Let's dive into the shocking story behind their sudden departure, the desperate move that has everyone asking, what's really going on? The headlines exploded across both sides of the Atlantic with a deafening force, as if a thunderclap had reverberated through every newsroom, shaking the very foundations of the media world. The news spread like wildfire, with a collective gasp echoing across continents. To be blunt, no one had anticipated this twist in the saga. Harry and Meghan, the couple who made a dramatic, high-profile exit from the UK in 2020, vowing to never look back and never return to the royal fold, have suddenly, and with little warning, resurfaced on British soil. And this isn't just a casual visit, a fleeting holiday, or some symbolic gesture of reconciliation. Insiders are now describing this as a full-scale escape from California, a flight of desperation, and it's nothing short of astonishing. Multiple sources have confirmed that the couple, accompanied by their children, packed up in an alarming rush, fleeing Montecito in what can only be described as panic mode. There's no other way to characterize the haste with which they left behind the seemingly picture-perfect life they had built in the sun-soaked hills of California. The timing of their departure is undeniably damning, painting a picture of something much darker unfolding behind the scenes. This sudden exodus occurred just days after Tyler Perry, a man whose influence and wealth make him one of Hollywood's most powerful moguls, publicly dropped an emotional bombshell on his radio show. The statement was nothing short of a financial detonator. Perry, with the force and clarity that only someone of his stature could command, demanded that Harry and Meghan repay a staggering $16 million within 30 days. Failure to do so would result in a courtroom battle that would expose every hidden financial detail, every arrangement they'd carefully kept secret. Here we have the woman who once captivated the world's imagination as a duchess, dazzling on red carpets, an image of grace and poise, who built an empire around the ideals of independence and empowerment. Yet now, she's reportedly holed up in some undisclosed location in the UK, desperately trying to evade the watchful eyes of one of Hollywood's most powerful and relentless figures. And the man who, in his memoir, made a spectacle of escaping the royal prison, escaping the constraints of his birthright, has now, quite ironically, sought refuge in that very prison. His return to the UK, the very country and institution he claimed to have been stifled by, speaks volumes. It reveals a truth about how deep their predicament has become. Apparently, being back within the folds of that royal prison feels safer than facing the fury of Tyler Perry's legal team. Think about the gravity of the desperation it must have taken for them to make such a drastic turn. Consider how much turmoil, how much chaos must have been swirling behind the scenes to make them not only retreat, but also to seek refuge in the very place they once sought to escape. For a man who had painted his exit from royal life as a triumph, a reclaiming of his freedom, to now turn back to that very institution for shelter, it's a move that, at its core, speaks to the crushing weight of the financial and personal collapse they must be facing. And then there's Meghan, the woman who became a symbol of independence, strength, and defiance, who turned her back on royal obligations to build something of her own, a brand, a legacy, only to now find herself hiding away in the UK, scrambling to avoid one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood. The irony is not lost on anyone. The very country they once denounced as suffocating, the family they publicly humiliated, and the institution they left behind in flames. It's the one place they have now turned to in their hour of need. This isn't just a scandal anymore. This is the unraveling of an empire built on borrowed money, empty promises, and the quicksand of broken relationships. What was once sold to the world as the story of Harry and Meghan's quest for freedom and independence has now become a tragic tale of financial collapse and desperate measures. The couple who once envisioned themselves as icons of modern royalty, forging a path of self-sufficiency and global influence, are now left scrambling to pick up the pieces of a shattered dream. Their sudden flight to the UK doesn't just mark the physical relocation of a family. It's a clear sign that things have gone terribly wrong. The financial strain, which had been quietly growing for months, has finally reached a breaking point. It wasn't just the public scandal or the negative media attention that drove them to this moment. It was the mounting pressure of unpaid debts, looming lawsuits, and the looming threat of bankruptcy that forced them to flee their California sanctuary. This dramatic flight back to the UK, to the family and institution they once rejected, speaks volumes about the dire straits they find themselves in. It's not just a retreat, it's an act of desperation, a final attempt to shield themselves from the storm that's been closing in. The once glamorous Montecito mansion, which stood as a symbol of their independence and new life, is now a weight around their necks. The estate, with its 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, and sprawling grounds, is not just a luxury, it's a financial millstone, one that costs millions to maintain every year. And the timing, it's telling. Just days after Tyler Perry made his demands public, their flight back to the UK isn't just coincidental. This is a direct response to the pressure, the mounting financial chaos that had nowhere to go but up. The couple is now trapped between a rock and a hard place, struggling to stay afloat in a world where their financial missteps have caught up with them in the most devastating of ways. This is no longer about media narratives or the carefully constructed image of freedom they once projected. This is a raw, unvarnished reality. They are on the run. They've fled the life they built in California in the hopes of finding refuge in a country they once publicly condemned, all while trying to avoid the relentless pursuit of their creditors, especially Tyler Perry, whose legal muscle is not something easily escaped. And yet, in the midst of all this chaos, there's a cruel irony. For all the power they once believed they had, for all the deals, the media deals, the book deals, the Netflix and Spotify deals that once seemed like a guarantee of financial security, they now find themselves desperately trying to rebuild, but with fewer allies than ever before. The golden opportunities they once envisioned have now evaporated, and the debts they've accrued are now becoming a public spectacle. This is no longer a simple scandal. It's the unraveling of everything they once held dear. The California dream they once embodied is dead, and the empire they tried to build on borrowed money, shattered relationships, and hollow promises is coming crashing down. Think about the desperation required to make such a move. Truly reflect on how grim their circumstances must have been to bring them to this point. Imagine how bad things had gotten for them to crawl back to the very family they publicly humiliated, to the institution they so fervently denounced, to the very country they once claimed was suffocating them. The scale of this desperation is staggering. This is not just about saving face or seeking shelter. This is about survival. A complete reversal of everything they once stood for, everything they once declared they had escaped from. They had spent years burning bridges, speaking out, painting their departure from the UK as a necessary escape from the chains of royal life. And now, just a few years later, they are willingly crawling back to the heart of the very system they rejected. This isn't simply a scandal anymore. This is the manifestation of a full-scale financial collapse, one that is unfolding before our very eyes. It is a slow-motion disaster, and each new piece of the puzzle only adds to the devastation. The flight to the UK in itself reveals something far more chilling, just how deep their money problems run. What was once portrayed as a dream life in California, filled with glitz, glamour, and a new beginning, now appears as nothing more than a house of cards, ready to fall. This was not just a strategic retreat from public scrutiny, nor was it an innocent desire to reconnect with family. This was an act of desperation, a last-ditch effort to salvage something, anything, from the ruins of a life built on shaky financial ground. The reality of their situation has been laid bare in a way that is impossible to ignore. Their return to the UK was not a choice driven by sentiment or nostalgia. It was born of necessity, a painful and unceremonious return to a place they thought they had outgrown, a place that once represented everything they were running from. But to truly understand the full gravity of their current predicament, we need to rewind to the moment when everything began to crumble. Because Tyler Perry's demand didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't some petty, off-the-cuff remark or a simple request for repayment. It was the culmination of a series of choices, miscalculations, and financial missteps that had finally reached a breaking point. His voice, cutting through the airwaves on a crisp December morning in 2025, carried with it a weight of authority that could not be ignored. The way he spoke, calm but undeniably firm, commanded attention, pulling everyone within earshot out of their distractions and demanding that they listen. "Harry and Meghan, you owe me a serious chunk of change," Perry said, his words deliberate, each syllable underscoring the finality of the situation. "That loan for your Montecito mansion. If it ain't paid back in 30 days, I'll have no choice but to take this to court." The moment those words left his lips, the world seemed to pause. It wasn't just the demand for money. It was the sheer power behind it, the way Perry, a self-made billionaire, used his platform to call out the couple on a level that transcended celebrity gossip. The financial scandal that followed wasn't just about a loan. It was the sudden revelation of years of hidden financial arrangements, secret deals, unspoken debts, and unaccounted-for loans that had been obscured behind a facade of success. The carefully curated brand that Harry and Meghan had spent years building, portraying themselves as the epitome of modern royalty, self-sufficient, independent, and above the fray, suddenly seemed hollow. The image they had so meticulously crafted for themselves crumbled with a single, public demand for repayment. Perry's declaration was not some fleeting outburst. It was a calculated move, one that could not be ignored or brushed aside. This wasn't about petty grievances or personal vendettas. This was a billionaire with immense resources and influence, publicly demanding the repayment of money that had been loaned to a couple who had not only failed to meet their obligations, but had done so with excuses and silence. Perry had extended more than just financial assistance. He had given them a safe haven, a sanctuary in Beverly Hills when they were at their lowest, offering them security and shelter in a time of crisis. But now, that same benevolent gesture had evolved into a financial stranglehold, a reckoning that neither Harry nor Meghan could escape. What makes Perry's demand even more impactful is the timing. The couple's flight to the UK wasn't just a coincidence, nor was it a spontaneous decision. The walls were closing in, and this was their desperate, final attempt to evade the consequences of their financial mismanagement. The $16 million that Perry demanded they repay was no small amount. It was the tipping point, the moment when the illusion of financial independence came crashing down. The Montecito mansion, which had once been their symbol of freedom, independence, and success, had become a metaphor for everything that had gone wrong. It was no longer a dream home. It was a liability, a financial anchor that was dragging them deeper into the abyss. What's even more tragic is the way this story mirrors their entire journey since leaving the royal family. They had sought freedom, but what they found instead was a complex web of financial arrangements, some of which were made under duress and others based on overconfidence in their future earnings. The truth was simple, though it had been obscured by all the media gloss. They were living beyond their means. The lavish lifestyle they had grown accustomed to, the security they enjoyed in their new life in California, was all funded by borrowed money, by promises of future wealth, and by the goodwill of powerful friends who believed in their brand. Tyler Perry wasn't the only one they owed money to. The loans, the deals, the arrangements, it was all part of a much larger, much more complicated financial web. And now that web was unraveling piece by piece. With Wise demand came the unmasking of years of financial mismanagement, a series of choices that had seemed innocuous at the time, but had now come to define their current crisis. The question wasn't whether they could repay the debt. It was whether they had the ability to ever escape the web they had woven for themselves. Within minutes, Tyler Perry's statement detonated across social media, like an explosive shockwave, transforming what had started as a celebrity gossip tidbit into a full-fledged financial scandal. It wasn't just another tabloid headline. It was a seismic shift that rocked the very foundation of the life Harry and Meghan had so meticulously built. Their carefully curated image of independence, success, and self-sufficiency began to crumble with a single public demand for repayment. This wasn't a moment of petty revenge, nor a personal vendetta from someone they had wronged. No, this was far more serious. This was a self-made billionaire, Tyler Perry, whose net worth exceeds $1 billion, publicly calling out two people who had been dodging his calls for months, evading responsibility, and leaving him with no choice but to take matters into his own hands. The sheer gravity of his words hit harder than any tabloid headline or royal scandal could. His was a demand for accountability, and it wasn't one he was willing to let slide. Sources close to Perry soon revealed that this wasn't his first attempt to resolve the issue quietly. He hadn't just jumped straight to public accusations. No, Perry had tried, time and time again, to handle things privately. He sent his lawyers, placed phone calls, extended deadlines, and even gave them the benefit of the doubt. All of this he did out of respect for his role as godfather to their daughter, an act of kindness that had once brought him into their inner circle. But when the repayment deadline came and went, leaving nothing but empty excuses, Perry realized that his patience had been exploited. He had no choice but to go public. By making the demand public, Perry wasn't just asking for his money back. He was cornering them, creating a situation where ignoring him was no longer an option. He was forcing them into a corner, and everyone could see it. The loan, as it turns out, traces back to 2020, a pivotal moment in Harry and Meghan's lives when everything began to spiral out of control. The couple had fled to California, desperate for safety and refuge from escalating threats and a lack of security. They were isolated, vulnerable, with nowhere to turn. In stepped Perry, a man who had built his fortune from the ground up, who understood what it was like to face adversity and hardship. He offered them sanctuary in the form of his sprawling Beverly Hills estate, a mansion that would serve as their safe haven during their most vulnerable months. It was an act of pure generosity, one that would later become far more complicated than anyone could have anticipated. But what began as an act of kindness from one of Hollywood's most successful moguls soon evolved into a financial entanglement that would ensnare them. The couple, after experiencing what felt like a lifeline, decided to take their next step, purchasing the Montecito mansion, their new home. The very home that would come to symbolize their new life, their newfound freedom, and their independence from the royal family. The Montecito estate wasn't just a property, it was a statement. A $14.65 million statement. 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, a tennis court, rose gardens, and sweeping views of the Pacific Ocean. Every detail crafted to scream success, independence, and the triumph of breaking free from the royal family's financial constraints. It was more than a home. It was a fortress of self-reliance and freedom, a beacon to the world that they had made it. Public records later confirmed that they secured a $9.5 million mortgage to fund their new home, but the math doesn't add up. With that kind of loan, it should have been straightforward. But there's a glaring discrepancy, a missing chunk of over $5 million that cannot be accounted for in the down payment and closing costs. This is where Tyler Perry's loan allegedly came into play. What started as a helping hand, a gesture of goodwill in their most fragile moments, now seems to have evolved into something far more complex. Perry, as their lender, didn't just provide shelter. He essentially stepped in to fill the financial gap, providing millions to cover the costs of the mansion when traditional financing couldn't. These weren't formal loans, the kind secured with contracts reviewed by legal teams. No, these were Hollywood handshake deals, born from trust, promises, and an unspoken belief in their brand. Perry believed in them, their potential, their ability to carve out a new life in the media world, generating income through Netflix, Spotify, book deals, and speaking engagements. The income stream seemed endless, and the thought of repaying a few $1,000,000 seemed like a trivial matter in comparison. But this rosy picture soon began to unravel. As the costs of the mansion, its upkeep, and their lavish lifestyle grew, it became apparent that the couple's income didn't match the financial demands of their new life. Despite their supposed success, the numbers didn't add up. The same mansion that once symbolized their triumph over royal life had, over time, become an albatross around their necks, a constant drain on resources they didn't have. Perry wasn't the only one involved in their tangled web of financial arrangements. The Montecito mansion, now valued at over $20 million, was a prime asset, but it was also a looming liability. The $16 million loan from Perry was just one part of a much larger, more complicated web of debts and obligations that stretched across Silicon Valley moguls, entertainment producers, and wealthy individuals who bought into the Sussex brand at its peak. But now, as the house of cards begins to fall, it's clear that their financial foundation is far more fragile than anyone ever realized. And as the cracks begin to show, Tyler Perry's public demand for repayment is the first of many financial reckoning moments they'll be forced to face. According to multiple sources, including Radar Online and the Daily Mail, Tyler Perry's involvement with Harry and Meghan extended far beyond simply offering temporary housing or a place to stay during their transition. Perry didn't just open the doors of his Beverly Hills estate to provide a sanctuary for the couple during their vulnerable months. He became deeply entangled in their financial situation. He fronted several $1,000,000 to help them secure the Montecito mansion. These weren't conventional, formal bank loans. No, these were the kind of unspoken Hollywood handshake deals that take place between wealthy friends, sealed not by contracts or legal documents, but by trust, promises, and an understanding built on mutual respect. It was a deal made over dinner, one of those conversations where future fortune seemed as inevitable as the sunset. Perry believed in their brand, in their ability to create massive waves in the entertainment world with their Netflix and Spotify deals. He thought that the potential to make millions, if not billions, from those deals was limitless. When Perry stepped in, it seemed like a simple matter of helping them get their footing, a temporary gesture of support for a young family navigating the brutal world of fame and fortune. At the time, repaying a few $1,000,000 felt like a trivial thing, something to be dealt with in the future once their media empire began rolling in the tens of millions. The couple's Netflix deal alone was projected to bring in $100 million. Add to that a $20 million deal with Spotify, book deals, speaking engagements, and the promise of a new empire under the Archwell Foundation, and the financial future seemed assured. They were poised for global success, and Perry, in his generosity, thought nothing of lending them a helping hand to secure the house that would symbolize their new life. The money they owed Perry seemed insignificant compared to the billions they would eventually make, or so it seemed at the time. But as with so many high-stakes ventures, the reality of their situation quickly proved far more complicated and much darker than anyone had anticipated. The Montecito mansion, which had once represented a new beginning, became an albatross around their necks. It wasn't just expensive to buy, it was ruinously expensive to maintain. The house, sprawling and grand, stood as a constant reminder of the fragile dream they had built. The 9 bedrooms, the 16 bathrooms, the tennis court, the rose gardens, and those sweeping panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean. It was all designed to show the world that they had made it. This was their "we don't need the royal family" moment. This was their declaration of independence, of self-sufficiency. They were free. They were no longer bound by the obligations of royalty. But what they didn't fully account for was the sheer financial weight that came with such a grand statement. The property taxes alone were staggering, over $200,000 annually. The cost of maintaining a mansion of that size in an area like Montecito with its million-dollar views and constant media scrutiny, was astronomical. Security expenses, especially given their high-profile status and the ongoing threats they had faced since their departure from the UK, ran into the millions each year. To protect their family from real dangers required constant vigilance, and it wasn't cheap. Then there were the other expenses that piled on with an almost suffocating weight. Maintenance costs for the sprawling grounds, the numerous staff salaries for gardeners, housekeepers, security personnel, and other essential workers who kept the property running smoothly. Insurance premiums, utilities, the endless upkeep required to keep a mansion of that size in pristine condition. Everything was a constant drain on their resources. The mansion, once their symbol of independence and freedom, quickly became a trap, one that drained their finances faster than anyone could have predicted. As time went on, it became abundantly clear that the Montecito estate wasn't just an asset, it was their most valuable asset, and it was now a prime target for foreclosure. The sheer weight of the property's expenses soon outweighed its value, and without a consistent stream of income to match, the debt began to mount. Perry, who had once stepped in to help, now found himself in a position where his initial loan had become something far more complex. What was once a favor between friends was now a lifeline, and if they couldn't pay him back, there was nothing to stop him from taking legal action. But Perry wasn't the only one waiting for his money. Leaked documents, insider reports, and accounts from those close to the couple revealed a financial web far more tangled than anyone had imagined. The Sussexes, who had once been seen as entrepreneurial darlings of Hollywood, were now revealed to be drowning in a sea of debt, owing money to multiple parties who had bought into their brand during its peak value. Silicon Valley tech moguls, Hollywood producers, and various other wealthy figures had invested millions, believing that the Sussex brand was a surefire win. But as it turned out, the promised returns never materialized. One tech billionaire allegedly lent millions with the expectation of lucrative future collaborations, partnerships that would create vast networks of influence, spanning from the Archwell Foundation to a new generation of tech-driven philanthropic ventures. Yet those partnerships never came to fruition. The anticipated tech collaborations fizzled out, leaving the investor empty-handed. Similarly, a Hollywood producer, eager to secure a place in the Sussexes' media empire, had reportedly paid for significant portions of the mansion's closing costs in exchange for production stakes in content deals. Those deals, too, turned into disappointments, with the promised blockbuster projects failing to get off the ground. What started as a network of support had morphed into a labyrinth of broken promises, abandoned deals, and unpaid debts. The couple had once projected an image of royalty without the royal title, free, self-sufficient, and independent. But behind the curtains, their financial world was built on a precarious foundation of favors and unaccounted debts, many of which they were no longer able to repay. Their entire media empire, once seen as a shining beacon of success, had become a house of cards. The financial missteps, the deferred payments, and the cost of maintaining their opulent lifestyle all pointed to a grim truth. Their independence had come at a far greater price than anyone realized. The tangled web of loans, deals, and IOUs was only beginning to unravel, and the revelation that they owed millions to Perry was just the beginning. This wasn't just a matter of a few unfulfilled promises or a simple financial hiccup. It was a collapse, one that was slowly consuming everything they had built. The couple who had once rejected the royal family's wealth were now desperate to stay afloat in a world where the debts they owed were far more than they could ever repay. These weren't traditional loans. There were no formal interest rates or scheduled payments. No legal contracts binding each party to their obligations. These were favors between the elites, deals made not on paper but based on relationships, mutual trust, and promises of future opportunities. The kind of favors that happen in the world of the wealthy, where millions of dollars change hands, not out of necessity, but out of confidence in the potential future returns. It's a world where money isn't just currency. It's a tool for building power and influence, and the stakes are high. The problem: the Sussex brand, once considered a golden ticket, a shining example of independence and success, has become toxic. What was supposed to be their escape from royal constraints, their way to carve out their own identity in a world of self-made wealth, is now a sinking ship. Once hailed as the golden children of modern royalty, they are now seen by many as a cautionary tale of overreach and mismanagement. Their estimated $60 million net worth, bolstered by Harry's inheritance from Princess Diana and the initial windfall from lucrative media deals, looked impressive on paper, something that would last them a lifetime, if not longer. But when you start subtracting the reality of their debts, the Montecito mortgage, Perry's alleged $16 million loan, and a range of other private loans and financial commitments, it becomes shockingly clear. The math just doesn't work. The numbers don't add up, and the picture of financial success they once painted has begun to dissolve. Their income, which seemed to be on a skyrocketing trajectory just a few years ago, has been sporadic at best. The Netflix projects, once thought to be the start of a new entertainment empire, have underperformed significantly. Their highly anticipated series failed to capture the audience they had hoped for, with viewership numbers falling far short of expectations. Similarly, their deal with Spotify, a contract worth millions, was cut short, with the streaming giant pulling the plug on their partnership early. The promises of massive deals from streaming platforms and book sales were supposed to be the foundation of their newfound financial freedom. But those foundations are now crumbling, and ongoing revenue has dried up faster than anyone could have anticipated. Spare, Harry's memoir, had provided a brief, much-needed windfall. But that was a one-time windfall, and it's already become clear that it hasn't done enough to secure their financial future. The book, while successful in the short term, couldn't provide the kind of sustained income they needed to cover their lavish lifestyle and growing debts. The royalty checks faded quickly, and the long-term revenue they had hoped to generate never materialized. And then there's the Archewell Foundation, the crown jewel of their philanthropic empire. What was meant to be their legacy of giving back to the world has become a financial disaster. The foundation, which was supposed to support causes close to their hearts, is hemorrhaging money. IRS filings have revealed that their expenses are vastly outpacing donations, a situation that has only worsened over time. Instead of becoming the beacon of hope and charity they envisioned, Archewell is now a financial burden that could soon attract even more scrutiny. Federal investigations into the foundation have intensified, with the IRS now looking into possible fraud, improper tax deductions, and concerns about the way the Montecito mansion has been used in relation to their charitable work. The connection between their personal assets and the foundation's spending has raised red flags. The IRS is particularly focused on whether they've improperly claimed the Montecito estate as a business headquarters, thereby potentially evading taxes through deductions that shouldn't have been allowed. It's the kind of investigation that could unravel everything, exposing the financial underpinnings of the Sussex brand for what they truly are. When you owe money to powerful people, and your income has dried up while investigations continue to grow, your options become limited. You begin to run out of roads to take, and that's exactly the corner Harry and Meghan now find themselves trapped in. The financial dream they once believed was within their grasp has become a nightmare. The creditors, the looming lawsuits, the unrelenting media attention, everything is closing in. The world they created, with its promises of success and independence, is crashing down around them, and with every passing day, it becomes more and more clear that the fairy tale they once lived is over. What's left is a sobering reality. They are now living with the consequences of the choices they made. No longer the darling couple of the royal family, they are now seen as financial pariahs, struggling to keep their heads above water while everything they built begins to disintegrate. And the worst part, they have no one to turn to, so why flee to the UK? The very country they once denounced, the family they humiliated, the institution they so publicly criticized. The irony, as deep and biting as it is, cannot be ignored. The move, despite the immense shame and public scorn, might be their smartest financial decision yet. As twisted as it seems, returning to the UK offers them a shield, a temporary fortress against the relentless financial onslaught they now face. By moving back to British soil, they've created a significant legal obstacle for Tyler Perry's $16 million claim. U.S. court judgments don't automatically transfer to British courts, meaning that Perry would need to initiate an entirely new legal process in the UK. It's a slow, costly, and cumbersome endeavor. This move has bought them valuable time, a precious resource they desperately need as they try to piece together their financial survival. But the truth behind this decision is far more complex than it seems. This move is not a permanent solution. They are trapped in the UK, ensnared by mounting debts and with no clear path forward. Every door seems to lead to another dead end. The safety net they hoped for, provided by their ties to the royal family, is an illusion. Even their public status, once their greatest asset, is quickly becoming a double-edged sword. The mounting pressure of their financial crisis has seeped into their personal lives, straining their marriage to the breaking point. The cracks in their relationship, once hidden behind a carefully maintained facade, are now becoming glaringly visible. If their marriage falls apart, and the weight of their financial burdens only makes that more likely, it will add another layer of chaos to an already overwhelming situation. Divorce would only deepen their financial ruin, dividing assets they can barely afford to keep, dragging out legal battles, and potentially incurring even more debt. Their dream of financial independence, the dream that was supposed to free them from the shackles of the royal family to build something entirely on their own terms, has turned into an unrelenting nightmare. What was once an idyllic life in California, with media deals and lucrative partnerships, has quickly spiraled into a web of unpaid loans, bad investments, and shattered promises. The brand they so carefully crafted, the empire they sought to build, is now crumbling at an alarming rate. What they once saw as freedom, as their way of defining their legacy, has become a weight they cannot bear. Tyler Perry's demand for repayment may have been the final catalyst, the last straw that forced them to flee. But the truth is, the bomb was already ticking. It was built over years of overspending, under-delivering on their promises, and alienating the very people who had once been their supporters. Perry's $16 million was just the trigger. The true destruction had been set into motion long before that, a culmination of poor financial choices, miscalculations, and the consequences of trying to live a life beyond their means. The lifestyle they had become accustomed to, the jet-setting, the lavish properties, the constant pursuit of fame and success, all of it had come at a steep price. And now, that price is finally being paid. Whether this ends in bankruptcy, foreclosure, a bitter divorce, or a combination of all three, one thing is absolutely certain. The life they envisioned is slipping through their fingers, faster than they can hold on to it. The golden dream of freedom, wealth, and self-sufficiency has dissolved into a nightmare of broken promises, mounting debts, and lost opportunities. And now, with nowhere else to run, Harry and Meghan are left facing the harsh reality of their choices. The facade has cracked, and there is no escaping the consequences of the empire they tried to build on borrowed money, fractured relationships, and an ever-shifting brand that no longer holds the same allure. So, what do you think? Can Harry and Meghan truly survive this financial storm, or is their California dream really dead? Do they have a chance of rebuilding, or is this just the beginning of an even bigger collapse? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to hit like if you're enjoying the deep dive into this financial crisis. And if you want more updates on this explosive story, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss out on the latest developments.